Hello everyone, welcome again to the channel. Today I want to share with you some news related to the Middle East, and I wanted to show you first this one that says Israeli Foreign Minister calls on United Nations to restore all nuclear sanctions on Iran. And the main thing is they say diplomacy has failed. Israeli Foreign Minister Yair Lapid is demanding Iran to be referred to the United Nations Security Council with an eye towards restoring every single sanction on them. Lapid is hoping that one of the parties to the nuclear deal can bring the issue as a snapback sanctions proposal. This is intended to prevent Russia or China from vetoing it, as they almost certainly would. Israel's goal is to isolate Iran internationally, and that they are working with the US on this. So I always thought this was a very ridiculous situation. Iran is having the nuclear talks, and there was this deal, but Israel is not party to the deal. So why do they care about this? If they wanted to have their security concerns addressed, get part of the deal, get involved, do part of the negotiation, promote the diplomacy, work with Iran, but they are not working with Iran, they just want all sanctions again. So I just think this is always the attitude of Israel against Iran. They just sanctions on it, but no sanctions against the Israeli regime. So this is very hypocritical. They always blame Iran as some kind of destabilizing influence in the Middle East, like they are so aggressive and this and that, but it's absolutely the opposite of that. And then there is this news related to this, which says United States envoy Iran's IRGC won't be removed from terrorist list, and says US is working closely with Israel. All options are on the table. This is their this is their preferred table. This table statement, it is always, they are saying, oh, we're so bad, be afraid, be very afraid. US ambassador to Israel Thomas Knight ruled out any US move to delist the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps from terrorist blacklist. The US continues to work closely with Israel on dealing with Iran, and that all options are on the table. He added that the US prefers a diplomatic solution. So all this statement is very aggressive, but they are blaming the aggressiveness of Iran. And who is aggressive here? Israel is aggressive, the US is aggressive, they are threatening war on a sovereign country over nothing. But still they say, oh, we prefer a diplomatic solution, we're so nice. If one prefers diplomacy, Israel is not a good choice to work with, of course, because they are always attacking everyone. They are even attacking Iran, which they blame for being aggressive. So who is the aggressive, the aggressor or the victim? And this one says US ramps up Iran sanctions as hope for talks fade. And in essence, they say the sanctions target Chinese and Indian facilitators for trade. US Treasury Department is once again announcing a new round of sanctions targeting Iran's oil and gas industry. If there was this nuclear deal, and there was a number of countries being part of it, and the US withdrew from the deal, so now they don't have any opportunity to impose all the sanctions that were considerable United Nations sanctions. So now all they have is their own U.S. Sanctions, no, the U.S. Treasury sanctions against Iran, and they are considerable. And but at least Iran now can be exempt from all the United Nations sanctions, which were more harming than only the U.S. sanctions. And anyway, they are hitting some Iranian companies, and they are hitting 6 other companies, 2 from Hong Kong and 4 from the United Arab Emirates, and they were sanctioned. Absent a deal, they will continue to impose more and more sanctions against Iran, and especially its oil trade. So why they blame the diplomacy on the trail in relation to the sanctions? They are not already party to the deal, so why do they care about diplomacy? Why do they care about the the outcome of the talks? If you want to talk, come and sit in the table. But they withdrew from the deal, and now they're blaming Iran again. Exactly the same behavior we see with Israel. So nothing really changed. And this is again with the Middle East and the United States. U.S. secretly reviews and approves many Israeli airstrikes in Syria. So why they are doing that? Israel has been secretly coordinating with the U.S. on many of its airstrikes in Syria, and senior officials at U.S. Central Command have reviewed and approved many plans in recent years. Israel frequently bombed Syria and frames the operations as strikes against Iran or Hezbollah, although the air raids often kill Syrian government troops and members of Iraq's Shia militias. The latest Israeli strikes on Syria disabled the Damascus International Airport, marking a significant escalation in the air campaign. So the Syrian government is a sovereign nation, and they decided to invite Iran to help them fight the insurgency in their country. So they have the right to do it. Why is objecting Israel against what another country is doing in its own territory? Anyway, this is the always attacking everyone around them, and they do it with impunity because they have the mighty power of the US against everyone who wants to have a fight with Israel. So they can go out and do everything they want. The main focus of the coordination is on airstrikes that pass near Al-Tanf Garrison, a US military base in southern Syria near the border with Jordan. The officials said that the vast majority of the strikes passing through that area had been approved by the US. So if you pay attention to this, the US complains about Russia, but the US is occupying illegally a big part of the territory of Syria. They are occupying, and who is imposing sanctions on the US? Who is banning all U.S. citizens from participating in sports or in everything? Where is the cancel U.S. movement? Where is the cancel U.S. culture? Where is all the talks about, oh, we stand with Syria? Where is the movement? We stand with Syria? I haven't seen any show of support for Syria. Why is Syria occupied by the U.S. illegal occupation of their territory? A big portion of it, and especially is the region where is the oil producing part of Syria, because they want to deprive Syria of the right to extract the oil from their own country. Not only that, they are occupying a section of the country which is the agricultural part of the country, so that the Syrians will not have enough food. They need to import food when before they were self-sufficient. So this is what the US is doing constantly, and nobody complains about it. Where is the outrage in the United Nations? Why haven't they, kicked the US from the, Human Rights Council or anything at all? Nobody even knows about this. It's very absolutely ridiculous, and biased, to say the least. The Israelis started flying airstrikes near Al Tanf in 2017 to avoid Syrian air defenses. Israel has also notified Russian forces at the Hmeimim air base in western Syria of planned strikes. The US doesn't review all Israeli operations inside Syria and doesn't help Israel pick its targets. The US has about 1,000 troops stationed in eastern Syria. Now they call it that, station. On paper, the presence is about supporting the Kurdish-led SDF against ISIS, but the occupation is about putting pressure on Damascus. The US maintains crippling economic sanctions on Syria, preventing the country from rebuilding after 10 years of war. This war, it was concocted by the US and the European Union and NATO, so this is what NATO is doing. This is what they wanted to do with Ukraine, and this is what they are doing now. So what is the nature of NATO? It's an aggressive organization, it's not a defensive one. So this is exactly what they're doing, and it is the hypocrisy of the Western countries, the Western powers, the European Union. They're so hypocritical. They're blaming everything on Russia. I'm not saying it's good to invade, but I'm saying that it was necessary for Russia to address their own security concerns, but they don't see the security concerns of anyone else. Only their own are valid, and only their interests are valid. Everything else is up for grabs for them. The US has always tacitly endorsed the operations, and it never condemns them. So it's like the same situation. Where are the United Nations sanctions on Israel? Where are the cancel movements about Israeli culture for attacking Syria? For occupying a portion of Syria for many years? What are all the sanctions? What is the Stand with Syria movement? It's just a huge hypocrisy of everyone in the world. They just eat the propaganda and swallow it whole. This is some more details about the attack on the Israel attack recently on Damascus airport. And they say that they are going to repair the airport, but Israeli attacks will come again. Shortly after dawn on June 10th, Damascus International Airport was bombarded by Israeli missiles, leaving 3 huge craters in each of its 2 operational runways. Since the Syrian civil war began in 2011, Israel has carried out hundreds of airstrikes against Syria, targeting government troops, Iran-backed forces, and Hezbollah fighters. And this is satellite image showing damage to runways. So these are the 2 runways, and these are the craters where they were targeting that. While Israel rarely comments on individual airstrikes, it has acknowledged carrying out hundreds of them, which it says are necessary to prevent Iran from gaining a foothold in Syria. The second passenger terminal had suffered significant material damage due to the Israeli bombardment. We were surprised that this kind of attack happened on a civilian airport. Even if we fix it, when will it stop? There is a possibility that this might happen again, and I and my team survived the strike, but the country is now restricted from an aviation perspective. There are no guarantees this won't happen again. Russia strongly condemns the Israeli airstrike on Damascus International Airport and calls on the Israeli side to stop this vicious practice. Such irresponsible actions create serious risks for international air traffic and put the lives of innocent people in real danger. An Iranian foreign minister condemned also the attack and says Israel's attacks on Syria's infrastructure are not only in violation of the country's sovereignty and territorial integrity, but also contravene international laws and humanitarian principles. And also from Hamas, they condemned it and says the Israeli occupation continues to target Syria because it's unable to subdue the country. Israel has previously accused Iran of smuggling weapons and men into Syria through the airport and attacked the Syrian port of Latakia in December 2021. Airstrikes are intended to halt Iran's consolidation in Syria. It is unlikely that Israel will stop the airstrike as long as Damascus is allowing Iran to utilize Syria in a military capacity. So it's Syria's fault, you see? It's Syria's fault. Israel is innocent. So it's more of the same. It never changes. It's exactly the behavior they had before, and they will continue doing it. And in a slightly different topic, I thought this was a very interesting article. It comes from the Times of Israel. They say planning to show Biden laser defense system seeking partnership. They say Jerusalem hopes to convince U.S. President to invest in new Iron Beam rocket interceptor, according to the report. And this is a photo of this system. I thought it was very interesting from the technological standpoint. And they say that they want to discuss new innovations between their countries that use laser technologies to defeat missiles and other airborne threats. So they say they want a joint defense partnership with regional allies against the threat of Iranian drones and missiles. Again, it's the excuse for everything they do. Iran is the aggressor. The ministry has been testing the laser-based defense system for several years, shooting down drones and guided rockets and anti-tank guided missiles in a series of tests. And the name of the system is called Iron Beam, and it's done by this company called Rafael Weapons Manufacturer, and they say it's good for shooting down smaller projectiles, and the system will be placed on the border with the Gaza Strip. As long as there is a constant source of energy for the laser, there is no risk of ever running out of ammunition. This is a potential game changer in the battle against projectile attacks. The downside of a laser system is that it does not function well in low visibility, including heavy cloud cover or other inclement weather. The ministry intends to mount the system on planes, which will help get around this limitation by putting the system above the clouds. So this is more of the system. And they say Israeli military officials have also said they have seen an increase in Iranian use of drone attacks in recent years, dubbing it Iran's UAV terror. They have a multi-tier air defense array made up of the short-range Iron Dome, the medium-range David Sling, and the long-range Arrow and Patriot systems. So Israel has a very sophisticated air defense system. That's already known. I thought this was very interesting from the technological point of view. It's a good innovation, in my opinion. So that's all I wanted to show and mention to you. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section, and as always I ask you to please like the video, share it in social media, and subscribe to the channel. I hope to see you again very soon. Thank you for watching.